Hey y'all, so in last week's mandolin music theory lesson, I promised to get into a little bit about chord substitutions. We really talked about chord substitutions all along, so I'm not going to get real technical on the chords. I've been through every shape of, say, a C major 7, an E minor 7, an A minor 7, a D minor 7, a G7. You got that in the older videos, or if you've got my book, Mandolin Mysteries Solved, you got the diagrams, they're all laid out there. I'm going to kind of tell you why this works. So this one's going to be a little bit heavier on the theory, I guess you'd say. Chords, of course, can be altered. And when we alter a chord, what we're doing is we're adding color. We're changing the sound of the chord just a little bit. So very standard chord progression that we've been over before. Did a full video on this in folk music, country, blues, whatever, rock and roll, is your 1-4-5 progression. That comes from British Isles, and really, whereas like indigenous African music is very different, blues, which is sort of that version of music in America, really still follows the 1-4-5 progression. It just sounds right to the ear. So we're in the key of C, it's 1, C chord, 4, F chord, 5, G7, back to C. Why is that 1-4-5? Well, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. 1, 2, 3, 4, F, 5, G. And the 5 is always a dominant 7. So, again, just choose two different G7s, just to show you how it, get used to those tones, because 99% of the time in most music you play, you could be doing a 1-4-5. Okay, so 1-4-5 is great, but there's not a lot of movement to it. So as music developed, as it kind of moved from early jazz, Dixieland, into the swing era, they wanted to put in more rhythms to help move the dancer's feet, more up and down the fretboard motion. So, like literally your fingers going. Very basic, right? So we're starting to use chords that incorporate a moving bass line to help people dance. That's really what it's all about at this point. Okay, we're talking like 1930s. Okay, late 20s, early 30s, getting into the 40s even. And the first thing to really come about was one I've done a whole video on, cycle of fifths. Lots of tunes in the 20s were based on the cycle of fifths. That's great, but not every song needs to follow a cycle of fifths. You may just have a passage where you're sitting on a C chord for like 4 bars, and that's not encouraging anybody to move, right? You're just... Yeah, that's boring, and it's boring for the player, it's boring for the listener. Now, it's still very common in folk and bluegrass and, all that, but for more dance influence, and you might say bluegrass is very much a dance music, and yes, it should be, absolutely. But the chords are often somewhat stationary. In bluegrass, what you would do is to add movement, we're just going from C, G, C, G, C, G. So Western swing and early swing music decided to alter it a little bit, and they found they could substitute a major 7 chord for a major chord. And from that major 7, you could move to a dominant 7 to a 6 and back up. Very good way of doing that. I showed you that last week. I'm not going to repeat it. It's really standard, and you've got all those chords in front of you if you have my videos or if you have my book. And if not, I'm sure you can look them up online, go to the Mandolin Cafe or whatever. A basic Mel Bay chord book. Well, maybe not. Actually not. No, you need my book. You need my book, Mandolin Mysteries Solved, because I give you the chords in all positions and scales, and actually it's pretty unique. I have a lot of mandolin books, and I think mine actually is pretty unique in the way I laid it out. But anyway, you can figure out how to go from major 7 to dominant 7 to 6 and back up, no problem. Now, there's another option, and okay, we just showed you on my fingers 1, 4, 5, so you know that's C, F, G. Now think about the notes of a C major 7 chord. C, E, G, B. So 1, 3, 5, 7. The B natural, not the B flat, as in a B dominant, is C dominant 7. You're here. Okay. There are 2 chords in a chord scale, and I've been through the chord scale, so you've already got that. Or you should, if not, get my book or go back and do the videos. 2 chords share several notes with the C major 7. There are the 3rd and the 6th. So C, E is the 3rd, and A is the 6th. An E minor 7, remember C major 7 is C, E, G, B. E minor 7 is E, G, B, D. So 3 notes of the E minor 7 are shared with the C major 7. An A minor 7 is A, C, E, G. So that's what? 3 or 4 notes? No, it's got to be 3. Okay, 3 notes of the A minor 7 is also shared with the C major 7. So you could substitute E minor 7 or A minor 7 for C major 7. So, or just C natural. All right, let's look at that. We've only got that 3-note chord. I'm going to play a 3-note E minor 7 with the E on top. I'll do the same thing over here with an A minor 7 with the A on top. And you hear all that? Because we're sharing the same notes. So instead of just sitting here, I can go. That's it. Go from the 3 to the 6 to the 1. Anywhere on the neck you want to go. Whatever. I mean, and just for convenience sake, I'm just playing the major chord, not the major 7. But you know, you got that down by now. I'm going to give you one more substitution, and it's the 2-5-1. We've already talked about this. So the 5 is the G7. So I'm sitting here in C, F, G7, back to C. You've done that a million times. Well, what if you play a couple of notes on the D minor 7, which is the 2 of the C scale, then go to G7. Wow, that works, right? And that's actually where they say jazz began, was the 2-5-1. 2-5-1. So now we can start from our C. Yeah, I probably threw the F in a weird place, but you got the point. So E, A, D, G, C. Now, we can also do substitutions for the F. The rules are the same as for the C. Find the 3rd and the 6th of the F. Don't need to get into that right now, but you see how that gives you all kinds of options. Now, the next phase in the progression of jazz and popular music in America comes about late 1940s, mid to late 1940s, when people like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie start soloing over those chord substitutions. So as the music's getting more sophisticated, the piano player and the guitar player are coming up with chord substitutions and more colorful chords. The horn players are playing single note solos. So as those chord changes are happening, the solo's just over here all up and down the scale and all up and down the modes. And that's where we get bebop. They would take a standard song like Sweet Georgia Brown or something like that, keep the chords, but then start doing substitutions, and the horn players are playing interesting scales and modes all over there, just up and down, and they're just playing, tunes totally lost their melody, totally stopped being danceable, but they became much more interesting to musicians. Now, that's up to you if you want to go that far. I like music that has a good rhythm. I think all music should be able to be danced to. I think, that's my philosophy. Music should be fun, not academic, not something you got to really think about, just something you feel. If you feel like that, if you want to listen to somebody like Oscar Peterson or John Coltrane, that's great. And if you can play like that, that's phenomenal. And, great. But it's not my thing. But when we come to soloing, well, instead of just playing like the C major scale over a C major chord, that gets boring. Well, I've given you various scales, pentatonic, bebop scales, that have different altered notes in there that you can play. I've given you modes you can play. Or, instead of looking at this, you can play over the E minor 7. You can play any E minor scale or any mode that works with an E minor chord. Or the same with the A minor 7. While everybody else is playing in the C chord. Because those notes are so shared, it's not going to sound weird to the ear. Your audience is probably not even going to really notice what you're doing. They're just going to hear all this interesting, colorful sound. And they're going to think you're just a genius. You may just be playing a mode that works over a minor 7 chord. Or, pentatonic minor or jazz minor scale over an A minor 7 chord while everybody else is in C. And it sounds like, wow, you're just like a genius. Well, no. You're just a guy who understands, or gal, who understands sort of the mathematics of music. That's what music theory is. Someone said one time that music is math in time. And that's really what it is. So from my perspective, I like using substitution chords to keep the rhythm going. I really enjoy that. My background's Western swing. I like that two-step rhythm and that energy it produces. I'm not, a bebop jazz guy. But if you are, like I said, I would say try to find a middle ground whenever you've got a song and maybe it's just sitting on one chord for a little too long. Try a substitution. See how it sounds. Do you like it? If you like it, play it. If you don't, don't. Whenever you want to solo or something and you're like, I'm kind of stuck in a rut, try a substitution chord and try a scale or a mode over that chord. Again, when you're playing with other people, most times, you don't want to just spring that on them. If I'll just give the same old example. If you're playing an old-timer bluegrass band, and do not start playing a minor 7 chord and soloing over a minor 7 chord when everybody else is on C, or somebody's going to hit you in the head with a banjo. But if you are in a looser situation and you're jamming with some guys or gals or whatever, I'm not PC. I'm going to stop doing that. So you're jamming with some folks and you're playing blues, you're playing rock, you're playing jazz, or you're just freeform playing, which, we all noodle sometimes, right? And sometimes some great stuff can come out of that. Then it's perfectly appropriate to do those substitutions. And if you're just soloing and you're not playing rhythm, most people aren't even going to notice that you changed. They're just going to hear you playing the same tones in a different order, and it's going to sound really interesting to the ear. And that's where modern jazz comes from. It comes from all those guys on the bus. Guitar players sitting there going over the same chords over and over. He gets bored. He starts substituting chords. The bass player's like, oh, that's cool. And now he's got some different places he can go. Piano player's usually not practicing on the bus. He's usually writing, actually. But the horn players are hearing that, and they're like, oh. And they start soloing over it, and next thing you know, by the time they get to the next town, they've turned back home again in Indiana into, what, was it Cherokee? I can't remember. No, it seems like, well, anyway, it doesn't really matter. There were so many of those just real standard songs that became, completely different tunes based on that substitution. Now, we have not really explored that a lot since then because, as I said, it tends to lose the listener. But there's no reason you couldn't go back and take, what's a classic rock song? Boston. Yeah, long time. Foreplay, long time. It's got that classic riff in it that Nirvana used in Smells Like Teen Spirit. I mean, it's like, it's, or maybe, Foghat, Fool for the City or something, or Slow Ride. That would be perfect, right? Slow Ride. Yeah, there's no reason you couldn't take a song like that and use chord substitutions and totally change the melody and totally change the everything using that concept of chord substitutions and soloing over those chord substitutions with the appropriate scales and modes. And maybe that is how progressive rock, maybe that's how Uriah Heep and those guys came up with that stuff. I don't know, but there is no reason you can't do that with any song if that's something you want to do. And I just want to stress and emphasize, totally optional. Totally optional. I much prefer, basic stripped down rock and roll when I listen to rock. I'm a Ramones and Motorhead guy. I'm a Jerry Lee Lewis and Roy Orbison and Johnny Cash kind of guy. Well, I could go down that road for quite a bit. I love rockabilly. I love punk rock. I love, blues rock. When it's stripped down and raw and real. I appreciate more progressive or interesting musicianship, but that's not what I want to play. Totally up to you. The way bluegrass has been going these days, if you want to be successful, you probably want to spend a little time learning it, because it's gotten pretty darn far away from Bill Monroe and those guys. I mean, it's not Jimmy Martin stuff anymore. I mean, as I often say, it's like really depressing elevator music played very fast, and I don't like it much anymore. But if you want to play in a modern progressive bluegrass band, learning those chord substitutions and learning how to solo over them fluidly, smoothly, and fast at the same time, that takes a lot of practice. That's probably going to get you a spot in the band. And always remember, for every bluegrass band, there's probably 100 mandolin players competing to be in there, because there are only that many bands that can actually make a buck. And look, you're going to be lucky if you make $75 a night. You're going to be real lucky if you make $75 a night. It's not, unless you're at the top, it's not a glamorous lifestyle. But it can be a whole lot of fun. For me, it's fun when I can play the music I like. I don't like to play super fast, and I don't like to get real intellectual with my playing. I like to play more soulful. I like to play more like what I would sing if I were singing. That's me, but you do you. Always do you as a musician. Never try to play like anybody else unless you're just trying to learn something from them. It is fantastic to get a record, a recording, a video, and learn to play a solo someone else has done. But then if you want to advance beyond that point, make it your own. And as I've said before, the best thing to do is learn that solo and then just start whistling or humming and coming up with a variant, an alteration. And then if you start doing chord changes, you may find you've come up with a completely different tune based around that one model. It's up to you if you want to go that route. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, y'all, have a good one. I'll talk to you next time. Remember, as always, Judson at judsoncarroll.com, or leave a question or comment in the comment section below the video. I'll get right back with you. I hope I've made this understandable. If not, it's so common sense in the book, Mandolin Mysteries Solved. That's the point of the book. It's taking these complex, seemingly, concepts and making them just absolutely elementary. So check out the book if you're interested. Y'all have a great week. I'll talk to you next time.